Hey everyone, welcome back to our continuing coverage of the Aaron Hernandez murder trial here on Wild About Trial. Today was a pretty spectacular day of trial. We got some real serious evidence in. We also got some very scandalous evidence in, as we heard for the most part testimony from Aaron Hernandez and Chayana Jenkins' babysitter, 28-year-old Jennifer Fortier. We got a good timeline from house surveillance videos, as well as a little insight into what happened 2 nights before outside of a nightclub in Boston. Fortier was obviously nervous on the stand, but composed herself well enough to really allow prosecutors to go over the timeline of events on June 16th. They corroborated her timeline with surveillance photo from Hernandez's home, meticulously going through seconds and minutes of footage in real time so that jurors can really get a sense of how long some of this took. In the footage, we see Fortier arriving around 8 p.m., and then about an hour later, Hernandez and Chayana Jenkins leave for their Father's Day drinks in Rhode Island. At midnight, Carlos Ortiz and Ernest Wallace arrive, unaccompanied by Hernandez and Jenkins, and Fortier lets them into the house. About 30 minutes later, Hernandez and Jenkins arrive back at the house, Hernandez alighting from the white Audi that they arrived in, excited to see both of his friends. And then we see a timeline of about 30 minutes to 45 minutes of some rather odd behavior. We see Jenkins and the babysitter hanging with the baby in the living room, while Wallace, Ortiz, and Hernandez, they take their time going in and out of the basement, in and out of other rooms of the house, in and out of the car, really taking their time with sort of strange, unexplained behavior. Prosecutors are going to allege that this showed that their planning phase of the night, that they were getting weapons and they were coordinating their ride to go pick up Owen Lloyd before driving him to the industrial park where he was shot and killed. In one really, really interesting moment, we see Hernandez walking with what appears to be a gun. Defense attorneys say that potentially it's an iPad or that it's a remote control, but if you look at the footage pretty closely, it looks like a gun. We also got a little glimpse of Aaron Hernandez, the father. It was Father's Day after all, the night of June 16th, 2013. And shortly before 1 a.m., we see Hernandez in the living room with his fiance, playing with his 7-month-old daughter, Avielle, having her on his knee, giving her a kiss goodbye before he leaves with Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz. Prosecutors allege that he left with these 2 men to go pick up Owen Lloyd and then drive him where they plan to shoot and kill him. Jurors will have to decide what they think about the video. Does Hernandez seem like a nice, playful dad, someone incapable of committing murder shortly thereafter? Or is this extremely ominous footage of a man who seems to have 2 sides, one, the family man, and the other, the cold-blooded killer? That'll be for jurors to decide. But here's where it gets really interesting. Fortier initially told police just about the night of June 16th, the night before Owen Lloyd was killed. She did not tell him about the night of June 14th, where she hung out with Hernandez and Owen Lloyd in the early morning hours after a night of clubbing in Boston. According to her story, she saw Aaron Hernandez in his black SUV outside of the W Hotel in Boston. She was with her friend. She said hello because she recognized him. He then offered to give her a ride to her friend's car located several blocks away. Now, she says Aaron Hernandez didn't drive her to her car, instead driving her and her friend back an hour towards North Attleboro to drop off a 3rd man in the car. Now, according to her testimony on cross-examination, she said that this wasn't anything particularly worrisome, that everybody was having a good time, that the boys were acting like little boys, and they were smoking weed, and everybody was in a jovial mood. However, Hernandez then, after dropping a 3rd friend off, drove Owen Lloyd, the babysitter, and the babysitter's friend to his quote-unquote trap house, or what they called the Spot, in Franklin, Massachusetts. There, they hung out for a little while before Hernandez went down to the bedroom downstairs. He then, according to her story, called her name several times. She came down to him. He tried to make a move on her, kissed her for a short period of time before she called things off. Shortly afterwards, he then went to sleep after telling her, "Don't worry about it, he's not upset." So now we're getting a little bit of story here of Owen Lloyd and Aaron Hernandez 2 nights before the killing. The 2 of them together hanging out with 2 girls who appears to be having a pretty darn good time. As far as motive goes, any sort of prosecution theory that they were arguing on Friday night, there had been a major dispute, this doesn't seem to be consistent with that. This seems to be 2 guys hanging out with each other, being friendly, and even spending some time with some ladies outside of their girlfriends. We'll hear a lot more as the babysitter's friend is expected to testify later in trial. Until tomorrow, I'm Ryan Kearns for Wild About Trial. We resume once again at 9 a.m. and you can live stream the entire thing at Wild About Trial.